everybody, it's Jerry Rasco. Good to see you again. Thanks for dropping by my YouTube channel and checking out this video. Just a little background. I am a comic book artist, if you haven't come to my channel before. And I have been working in independent comics since the early 2000s. Worked with a number of different publishers. And I've also been involved in the comic book convention circuit since that time as well. So I've traveled the country. I've seen a lot of folks, hopefully a lot of you, in different cities around the U.S. And that experience has led me to this video today. So one of the things that used to happen quite a bit with my experience in conventions, at least in the past, I don't know if it's as prevalent today, is that I would have young or new artists come up to my table a lot and want to show me their samples. They wanted a critique, they wanted a review, and I'm always happy to do that. I have a background in art education. That's the degree that I received from college. And so I'm happy to share that knowledge and work with folks. And one of the things that I would always see from young or new artists is they would show me pinups, and usually they're showing you character designs. It's very seldom is it storytelling. It's not even necessarily cover work. It's almost always character design. So you see just a pinup or just a straight shot of a new character, their character that they have come up with. And so what I wanted to do in this video is talk a little bit about character design, because I think it's something that a lot of, again, young or new, I use that term interchangeably. Age doesn't necessarily reflect new or young, just somebody who's starting out drawing and trying to draw comic books and comic book characters. Character design can be a little difficult. Again, I got a lot of questions about it. And what I would see in these designs was a lot of complexity, a lot of intricate detail, things that they thought made their character cool, whether they did or didn't. That's the artist thought that, this element would make my character look cool, maybe make it stand out. And I just, again, wanted to talk about some of the thought process that I have behind creating characters and the look and the design of characters. And hopefully you'll find some of this information helpful if you indeed are a new artist or a young artist looking to get into comics and you're kind of struggling a little bit with character design. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is what are the things that you're looking for in what makes a good character design, and sometimes what makes a bad character design, so you know what not to look for. So of course your character design should always be unique. You don't want to be copying or stealing from existing creations. The other thing you have to think about is, who is your character? What is their role in the story? So again, if it's superheroes, just as the example, that's most of the examples that we will be going through today. But this applies to anything. Like, what are their powers? What is their personality? What do you have a name already? Sometimes the design lends to a name. Sometimes the name lends to a design. So if you already have a name, you want something that's going to reflect that name. We obviously have a great example in that everybody knows in Batman. If you have a Batman and he has feathers on his costume, or he's all crazy armor and stuff, it's not very bat-like. So what are the elements of a bat that you want to translate to a character like a Batman? So the wings, the cape folding out to look like bat wings, the points on the cowl to mimic bat ears, those things all work together towards your design. The other thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to show examples, so bear with me, is you have to think about, is this a primary lead character? Is this a character that you're going to have to draw 900 times, right? So in every panel of every page of every comic, if you have to draw this character over and over and over and over again, you need to make sure that the costume is something that is easy enough for you to do that without making mistakes. Um, and that's something that I think we'll see here is more prevalent in a lot of classic characters. And some of my examples of more difficult, I'll say difficult costume designs, I'm not judging good or bad, I'm just saying more difficult designs tended to come out of things like the 90s, the 2000s. So, with that said, let's jump into some examples. So, I'm going to show you some classic examples here. I think that everybody who reads comics would know as to what I'm going to deem as a good or easy design. But also I'll explain why it's good, and then I'll talk about these other designs that maybe are more complicated and would become more difficult if you wanted to draw that in a comic every single day. So the first one that I have to show you here is classic Green Lantern. If you're not 100% familiar with this character, you're probably going to know that green is in the character name. So color can be very important to tie your character design to that character name. The other thing you have here is this logo. So it is a stylized lantern, kind of like an old railroad lantern, the kind of thing that would hang. And this ties back to the history of the character. And so that stylized lantern logo is also in the ring that he wears. But then what you see here is a very simplistic costume, but it's elegant in its simplicity. It is basically a painted human figure. There's no wrinkles, there's no folding, there's no seams, there's no buckles, there's no layers. It is as simple as the human form can be, with, again, essentially being painted on top. But what it does in the cut of the costume is very interesting. So the shoulders, the green part of the shoulders comes in, and then it cuts it down across the chest a little bit, and then makes sort of a hourglass type shape, if you will. Here it's sort of the mid-lat, kind of mid-rib cage. And then it comes down to the waist. In the old original Green Lantern, it came straight down and he had sort of shorts on. And so what they've done, this is a more modern interpretation. This is more the current Green Lantern type of look. It comes down to the waist. It comes down to a V at the waist. The pants are this blackish gray color. And then he has just almost like a sock, like a thigh-high sock boot or a calf-high sock boot, and a forearm high white glove. So what does this do for you? Well, it makes it very simple. This is a character who uses this energy ring to create things. He doesn't have superpowers within his own body. He doesn't use other weapons. He doesn't need a cape. He doesn't need all that stuff. Again, just an excellent, simple costume, and something that's easy to replicate over and over within a comic, within panels and pages. The other thing I'll talk about real quick is the mask. So a lot of times, again, this is more of a psychology thing. Is your character a hero or is your character a villain? So you may want to cover their face, at least partially, and the premise within the storytelling is that this will protect his identity. And let's be honest, if you saw this man with or without this mask, they're pretty recognizable. But that's the understanding, the social contract that we all make when we're dealing with superheroes, is that a simple mask like this can protect your identity. But what you don't want to do in a heroic character like this would be to completely cover his face necessarily. One, it's a character that's going to be doing a lot of emoting, talking. His face, his expressions are going to carry the story, and the reader is supposed to relate to them. And so it helps the more you can see that face. Now, there are exceptions to that, and we'll get into one of those probably next year as to why sometimes you can break those rules. But again, this is a great design. Simple, elegant, easy to replicate, has the psychology of the character name embedded into the costume. Really, really nice design. So here's the break of the rule that I just mentioned, and that is Spider-Man. Spider-Man is very similar to Green Lantern in that it is essentially a painted human figure. There are no wrinkles, there are no seams, buckles, belts, layers, etc. Spider-Man is as lean of a costume design in terms of the silhouette that you can get. And that's another thing that we'll be talking more about through this video as well, is what is silhouette. So basically, if you colored this character in all in black, would you be able to recognize them in some way? And the one that everybody uses again, and we'll see him later as an example of the one of the best silhouettes in comic books, is Batman. You can show Batman completely in shadow. The shape of the cape, with it has what's called scallops on the bottom, so it kind of loops up and down at the bottom, and then the straight up kind of headpiece and pointed ears on the cowl makes Batman one of, if not the most recognizable silhouettes out there in terms of a character design. Spidey relies more on probably body language. If you black this out and you read comics, you would know this is Spidey based on the pose. You could say Daredevil, but Daredevil, while similar in shape and form, has horns that might stick out a little bit, and also has a sleeve or like a holster on his thigh where he carries his billy club weapon. But Spidey here is very, very simple. Now, you may be saying, but the web design, and I agree with you. There are artists that will turn away from Spider-Man because they find the web design to be intimidating. It is at first, but there is a pattern to it and there's a logic to it. And once you get the hang of it, you can draw Spider-Man in different poses, in twisting shapes and upside down and backwards and every way direction you possibly can, because that's what the character does. And you can get the webbing to work because it follows a specific pattern around the body. The sort of, again, scallop shape of the webs always point in one direction. And then there's certain number of lines, radiating lines through the body. And so you can definitely figure it out and get it to work. So this is one where maybe it's a little in between. It's not the easiest design because of the webbing, but it is exceptionally recognizable. So that's another feature. You don't want to do a character that could look like 9 other characters. Nobody quite looks like Spider-Man in comics. So when you see this, you know exactly who it is. And again, a logo on the chest is a bit of a throwback. We don't see that as often as we used to, but helps somebody who may not know the name of the character. They might recognize the spider on the chest and go, well, he's a spider guy, so maybe his name's Spider Guy or Super Spider or who knows, but you're halfway there. So again, another design element that can really help you out. Let's see here. So now we're going to go to one of my all-time favorites. This is a great design. So this is Captain America, designed by Jack Kirby. Follows a lot of the same principles. Fairly simple. A little bit more. There's some wrinkling in the costume, in the shorts, the gloves, the boots, etc. Some of that is just a matter of how Jack drew it. Not everybody would draw these wrinkles on Captain America's costume. Some people do, some people don't. But again, who is the character? The character is Captain America. So how do you epitomize America in a character? You use elements of the American flag. So you have a really big star on the chest. That is a logo. You see it replicated here on the shield. You also have the A for America, which over the years, some people have said is kind of hokey. Some people really like it. It's been stylized in like the movies and things, but that is another logo. So you have that white A on blue in that kind of design. That's Captain America. You know it. Even though his head is covered, you see a lot of Steve Rogers' face. You can see his eyes and his mouth in terms of emoting, so you get all the emotions that you need there. He has something that Jack Kirby used a lot. He liked these. We refer to them as swashbuckler boots. So it's like a boot with a folded cuff over the top. It it has its history in a lot of things. We say swashbuckler, so you think of pirates, but you could also probably find something along those lines with probably old military design going back to maybe the Revolutionary War kind of stuff. But it just it says adventure. That's one of the things that you're trying to get across. And then Captain America, again, what makes it unique? So it could be just a costume, but this top part is supposed to be like a chainmail mesh to help protect him, even though he has a shield. And the way that Jack Kirby hinted at that is the shadow underneath these little scales that overlap on his costume. And that's something, again, that you don't see in a lot of other characters in comics, and so really helps set Captain America apart. So a design, again, that has little elements that make it interesting to the eye. When you first look at it, you just see a figure, then you start looking around and you go, oh, he's got little wings, right? He's got little, I guess, eagle wings on his cowl. Oh, here's all the stripes going around. Oh, look, there's these little scales on his costume. So if you see, a knife bounce off or something like that, it makes sense, in the story. So there's visual interest, simple silhouette. Again, another silhouette. If you see Captain America's head with those little wings pointing out the top, be pretty easy to recognize. So another example of a really good design. And so now we're going to get to some that are, again, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not judging on that. I'm just saying that they are difficult. So the first one I'm going to show you here is called Bloodstrike. So this is a 90s character, and again, very cool. I'm a big fan of the 90s comics. I love the characters. I love the designs and things like that. But you can imagine that unless you're the artist who drew this cover, it would be really hard to replicate all of these details over and over. So you would have to have probably your original drawing and be referencing back to it all the time. So, as you look at this strap across the front, how many of these little rectangle pouches are there? How many of these tubes are there? How many canisters in this one? How many post things are sticking up from his back? How many times, did the artist draw this one on the shoulder, this one across the shoulder, one across this chest, maybe then down this one and forgot this little one here, or forgot one of the straps on the legs, for example. So you can have things that make sense. When you have a character that uses a lot of weapons and they want to have stuff that they carry around with them all the time, it's perfectly fine to have pouches, to have guns, to have things sticking up from their back, be it swords or whatever. That part all makes sense. That's not a problem. It's just a matter of, can you keep it straight? The last thing you want to do is from panel to panel in a same page is be like, well, in panel 1, he had 1, 2, 3 straps across his chest. And in panel 2, he's only got 2. And then in panel 4, he's got 4 straps. And it just takes the reader, or it can take the reader out of the story. So again, my recommendation is, this is a little complicated. I'd like to see, here, I'll make it a little bigger. An interesting, and what I would definitely say is cool, but not easy from a character design standpoint. So here's another one, also kind of from that same time. This is one from Marvel. This character is called Strong Guy, and he was from a team that had a uniform, essentially, that kind of carried through, and each character had a slight twist on the uniform, but the idea was they all had sort of superhero costumes, so sort of your superhero pants, boots, short gloves, And then they had these jackets on top of their costume that would have the big X logo and sort of a cross zipper type of thing. Now, here's the reality. You can find that sort of like a leather jacket with sort of a cross zipper type thing. It's a really neat fashion design, but again, not easy for somebody else to replicate. The artist who designed this might know, oh, this is what I intended and this is how it works. But how do you draw this guy from the side? That would be pretty tough. So where do these straps here wrap around? They seem to go under the ones around the waist, at least on this side. Do they also do the same thing on this side? There's a buckle here that pulls things together, and here, which I guess is maybe holding on these shoulder pads. Again, it's a neat design. I think it's cool, but boy, it would be really hard to draw in a lot of different angles and to be consistent with it over and over, to make sure you have the right number of elements on the sleeves, how many straps across the stomach on each side. So the zipper part, and then you can see it's only zipped up to here. It's sort of unzipped here, so you can see some almost like quilting underneath. So you've got to add that element in. There's a lot happening here. Again, doesn't make it a bad design. It just isn't simple and isn't a super great silhouette. Other than that, the character is sort of I'm not going to say deformed, but he has a very, very unique body type where all the mass and muscle and everything is up very, very high into the shoulder, chest, and he has kind of, while muscular, he has smaller legs. That's part of the character, the overall character design, not just the costume design. And that's something that this artist, he didn't come up with. The character already existed that way, and it has to do with how his powers are. So, but from a costume standpoint, difficult. So again, compare this to this. Huge difference in the simplicity and the ability to easily recreate it consistently. So I've got a couple more here, and then we're going to get to something else. So here's another one from the 90s. This is sort of what I would call an in-betweener. So this is Spawn, and Spawn is not the hardest character necessarily to keep drawing. The difficulty becomes when you start all the add-ons. So the mask itself isn't too bad. It's a faceless mask. Spawn is not a true hero per se. He's what you would call an anti-hero, where sometimes he's not good, sometimes he's not evil, but he's, but he could be ruthless, or, so he's not your traditional red, white, and blue hero. He's not Captain America, right? So you can cover his face, and he has this design around the eyes, which isn't too bad. Over the years, it's gotten more and more elaborate. It used to just kind of be sort of points, sort of like an eye type look, and it's gotten bigger and bigger. You have some skulls. The costume design, again, is very simple if you take away all of the way that the artist, Todd McFarlane, is drawing it. There's tons of hatching and little lines, little flicks and things. But if you take that away, it is just a painted person in a black bodysuit that has a white, almost kind of V-ish shape on it. That's not hard at all. Where it comes into difficulty when drawing Spawn is all the accessories. So you take away the simplicity of the mask and the bodysuit, and now you start having things like this big gauntlet that has spikes on it. And what are the order of the spikes? So it looks like it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. But then there's this thing over here. What is this? Is this a rivet, a bolt, a broken spike? I don't know. You have the skulls, these stylized skulls, which hold chains. Those are fine, but now you have the chains, and the chains with Spawn swoop around and sort of have a mind of their own, and can be really... Chains are not easy to draw, and at least not easy to draw right. You can do sort of a fake shape of, square line, but to draw it in more real 3 dimensions, where the chains are linking through each other, that takes a lot of time. Then you have spiked armband over here. another little chain over here, and then the cape itself is always flowing. It's in tatters. The edges are sort of ripped at times and stuff like that, along with this cowl. So it's the accessories. Here's another chain over here around the arm. I almost missed that one. The accessories on Spawn can be very difficult and very time consuming. This is another factor you have to take into consideration when you are doing costume design. If you're an artist and you're trying to do a monthly comic book, you may have anywhere from 20 to 22, maybe even more, pages to draw in a single month. And a page typically for a professional artist, one page takes one day. If you're really good, some people can do 2 pages a day. That might be if you have an inker and you're just doing the penciling. But if you're, and more today, we see pencilers inking or working digitally, so it's all one thing. You have just under a month. You have about, 3 weeks worth of work. Then you've got to turn around and get to the next issue. So if drawing all these chains and drawing all these accessories takes you double the time it would for a character like Spider-Man, then boy, you need to find a way to speed that up. And so that tells you that, again, if you're drawing your own comic and you're designing things, think ahead. Think about the work. Think about the effort you're going to be making. Chains look super cool. Spawn is super cool. The cape and the cowl, super cool. But how fast can you draw this character? So something to think about. And then this is another one that's a little more modern even than Spawn. So far we've seen characters from the 90s. This is a character from, I think, the mid-2000s. I don't remember exactly when this was. But this is like an alternate dimension take on a Bruce Wayne that essentially I think was broken by the Joker and sort of Jokerized. So it's called The Batman Who Laughs. And so this again is a design where you look at it and you go, oh, it's very cool. You think about like horror movies and stuff. If this was a live action character, it could be right from the Hellraiser movie series, right? Everything from the little veins in the hands and the red sharp fingernails, the teeth, the spikes blocking the vision, all the buckles and straps. Super cool. A lot of chains again, just like Spawn. But man, having to draw this character in a monthly comic book over and over and get done in a timely manner would be a nightmare. Having to keep that reference of how many buckles are around the waist, how many buckles over the shoulders, and then having to draw each of those little buckles and every strap. And one of the things you have to do, I don't know if you can tell here, the character is black leather on black leather. So how do you draw a black leather strap on top of a black leather bodysuit or coat or whatever it is without the two things blending together if you just shade it all black? You have to draw this edge. So as an artist, I have to leave this edge line blank and add the black on top and the black to the side. And now that edge light on the side creates the shape of the buckle. So I can't just color it in. I can't just color the thing in the parts that are black. I can't just color in black. I have to add all these little folds and wrinkles and things to break the shapes apart because it's black on black on black. So that doesn't work, right? And then you're doing this with the spikes. So there seems to be one dead center, off to the left, off to the right. How many are there? Are there ones in the back? I don't know. And then again, all these chains that we talked about when we were looking at Spawn, very tough. The veins in the hands, again, you could just draw a hand, and there's nothing wrong with just drawing the hand. But because the character's super emaciated and you want it to be extra creepy, which is cool, you have to draw all these veins and stuff in there, all the wrinkles around the lips, in the fingers and the hands. This is a character that would be fun to draw for a cover or for a pinup, but to draw within the context of a monthly comic and storytelling would be hard. And then we have the last one here, which is, I think all artists would credit this as the most difficult. I know there are artists that straight up will not draw Galactus. This is Galactus by Jack Kirby. This is a 1977 pencil drawing by Jack Kirby. People will straight up not draw Galactus at conventions. You know, if somebody's like, "Hey, I'll pay you to do a commission or a convention sketch of Galactus." Maybe they'll do the head, but even then, there's so much specific detail, and you have to look at it. You have to get on your phone. You've got to pull up an image like this, and then you've got to try to figure out how it all works unless you copy this exact pose. So, like, if he puts his arms down, do these lines then point down? Do they still point out? What does the shoulder kind of look like? There's things you can't see. Sometimes the helmet has more protrusions extending from it. I don't know that Jack Kirby drew Galactus exactly the same every time. I think he hits the big things, which is sort of this mask, the shape of the helmet, this circle on his chest, and maybe like the skirt element here, and then the rest of it is sort of up for grabs. So Galactus is arguably one of the most complicated character designs in comic history. People dread having to draw Galactus. But when you talk about things like a silhouette, this is extremely recognizable. I mean, I'll tell you, so for, as a comic book fan, I have seen the trailers at the recording of this video. The new Fantastic Four movie has not come out yet. I've seen the trailers. I've seen the video, and you see like I believe it's a shadow of Galactus falling over New York, and I can recognize that shadow because of the helmet, because of the unique protrusions that come out in the shape. I know that's Galactus. There's one scene I think you see a foot, and again, just the way that it's drawn here, and these sort of radiating tubes that go around the leg, it's Galactus. So on that part, Jack hit a home run. This is a character that you cannot mistake for anybody else. You don't want to draw this 500 times. Now, here's the caveat. Galactus is not the leading character of the story. Galactus is the villain. Galactus sort of shows up. He doesn't do a lot. He's a force of nature, so things just sort of happen. He's not the kind of character that's going to land and start tearing buildings up with his bare hands. He has his heralds that do work for him. He has technology that does work for him. He's just kind of stands there. So that part's pretty good. So you can get away with sometimes a very complicated design like this when your character is not the main focus. So that is entirely okay. But just, you have to note, man, if you have to draw this, you have to draw this 100 million times in the issues that he's in. Fortunately, Galactus doesn't have his own comic book, where that would be crazy. So, just to recap here real quick, some of the things that we pointed out with these examples. So one, simplicity. If your character is a hero that you're going to see over and over again, keep it simple. There's an acronym that people use in all branches of life. I've heard it used in engineering specifically, but I think it kind of applies to a lot of things, and that is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And what that means is make it easy, make it simple. Example was, next to Galactus is a Silver Surfer. It's just a silver person, basically a silver naked form on a rectangular board. It doesn't get more simple than the Silver Surfer. He's a silver guy on a surfboard. Nailed it. So keep it simple, stupid. That's a way to do it for your characters you're going to be doing over and over and over again. Recognizable. Get a logo. If you have multiple characters, I've done this for my own comic where my characters have a unifying costume theme. So there's a style or an element to the design, and then you change up the colors or you change up individual things to based on the characters' personalities, power sets, etc. But they all have a unifying theme that ties them together. Silhouette. If your character's covered from head to toe solid black, are they remotely recognizable? Would you be able to tell that one character from another? So think about characters like Batman is a super awesome example of a character that's all in all shaded out, just solid black. You recognize them as Batman. Galactus, another example. So we've talked about those things. Color choices can be important. Obviously, that was something like Green Lantern, for example, really made a difference. Or like I talked about the Batman Who Laughs. If you have black on black on black design, how then does the artist have to separate those elements? The more elements you build in, the more drawing has to be done, and it's going to take more time. So think about some of those things. And then the last thing I'm going to show you here is another picture that once you've done a character, I be honest, I'm guilty of this myself because I do character designs for myself as an artist. I don't hand them often to other artists to draw. And so I don't really think about this too much. But when you design a character, especially if you're going to be working with another artist, you need to do what is called a turnaround. And I'm going to show you what an example of what that is. So this is an example of a Batman turnaround. And again, all these images, I've sourced all these from the internet. These are not my drawings, by the way. But this is a Batman turnaround. It looks like it's based on an animated version of Batman from, I think, Young Justice. But clearly, it is Batman. Even without them saying it's Batman, we recognize Batman because of, again, the great design. The pointed cowl, the part that comes down over the nose, the bat logo in the middle of his chest, the scalloped cape, everything makes it very clear that this is Batman. So what I see, or what I used to see a lot when folks would come up to me and go, hey, can you look at my sketchbook, or can you look at my portfolio? And they'd have a character design. It would be like this, or more likely like this. So this is a front view. This is what we call 3/4 because the character is slightly turned to the side. This is full profile. This is back view. So a lot of times you'd see this view and only this view. And while that is fine, there are questions about, well, what is the, what does the belt do in the back? Does it stop here? Does it wrap all the way around? Are there more of these sort of slits or ports or whatever, vents or whatever in the back? And then you see things, how you can kind of see how the knee armor, I guess, if you will, works. But what you don't see here is like the elbow. So there's like an elbow pad or elbow armor here that you can't see in this view or this view. But when you see it profile and from the back, you can see it. You see how the shorts work, how high are they, how far down do they go? What about the back of the boot? So the boot comes up as a point in the front. What does it do in the back? Does it dip all the way down? Does it come down and around? Does it dip down on the side and go back up? You don't know that until you see this back view. So these are important things to do if you are designing something that you are going to hand to another artist. I will tell you a story. I will leave the names out. But I spoke with a professional artist who worked for DC Comics. He was working on a large-scale crossover event, so lots of books within this one character's line of books. And there was a redesign of the character. So one artist had redesigned the character and had made a very mechanized version of the character. So they took the original character design and made it very mechanical, robot-y tech stuff. And they only really drew it from the front, maybe from the side. They didn't do the full turnaround like this. And so the artist that designed it drew it a couple times and then handed it to everybody else who had to draw it and said, here you go. And they all struggled to go, well, what does the back look like? So, if it's a character like Batman, how does the cape connect in the back? On the front, you have this tube that kind of wraps around the back. Let's say, where does that tube go? Or where does this, You have straps on the legs. Where do the straps go in the back? Do they buckle in the back? Do they just stop on the side? There was a lot of these questions, and it led to a lot of frustration. So the artist I talked to, he talked about how frustrated he was, that there were times he'd have to make stuff up. And then other artists were doing the same thing, but everybody's trying to produce in a timely manner in a monthly format. And they didn't have time to share and compare notes. And so you ended up with different versions, slightly different artistic takes on the character from every single comic that he came out in. And there was no consistency. And I think personally that really hurt some of the storytelling. It was harder for readers to take the character seriously when every time you see them, they look a little different. And again, so talking about keeping it simple allows for repetition, allows for other artists. You could still add your style of the way you draw, but keep all of the same elements in place, and it's the same character. When the elements of the costume have to change because somebody doesn't know what it's supposed to look like because you didn't give them something like this, then that leads to frustration. So that's the example of a turnaround. And to be honest, like I said, I do not do this myself often, only because when I design the character in my head, I'm the only one who's going to be drawing it. I know what I want, or I'll figure it out at the time. I don't have to worry about handing it off to anybody. But if you're going to show, definitely, if you're going to show someone your character design and go, hey, what do you think? Having multiple poses of that character design, it doesn't have to be as formal as of a turnaround like this is, but drawing them maybe in a couple different poses, up, down, definitely maybe, from behind, crouched, jumping, whatever they do, that's going to be very helpful. Just showing this 3/4 pose tells me a little bit, but it definitely doesn't show me how how to manipulate the figure with your drawing. So that is a turnaround, and that is how that works. So we've been talking for a lot about character design. I hope a lot of this helps. I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to go over to my drawing board, and I'm going to show you a little bit about how I sometimes will work on a character design. Sometimes I just straight up just start drawing the character. Like, I know the character, I know their name, I have a brief description from the writer, and I'll just grab a piece of paper and just start sketching something. I have a unique situation on a project that I'm working on right now where, again, I have to draw characters that have a unified look, a uniform costume base design, and then each character has a little bit of a twist on it based on their powers, their name, etc. So I've got to come up with a base design, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Okay, here we go. So we're at the table, and this is something that I came up with a while back, where what I did is I just sketched out, I think in a sketchbook, a very basic human male form, blank form. So I'm not worried about the shape. So, maybe I have if I'm designing something for a character who is 20 feet tall and or maybe super skinny or something like that, I'm doing the design on the form here just to sort of look at the lines, the shape of the costume on a form. So think of it like a mannequin, and then I can take that design and do a unique drawing for that character's body type, and then I'll be able to adjust it. But this is just to, again, think of it like a mannequin, to just put things on top of shapes, designs, etc., and see what I like and see what I don't like. And in fact, for this one, I'm going to go with, I'm going to get a pen out. Normally I would be doing this in pencil, but I want to make sure that it shows well. So I'm just going to do it straight in ink, again, to just as an example. So what I've done is I've scanned that form, and I have it on my computer, and then in Photoshop, I just copied it onto on the same page multiple times, so I can print multiple copies of this, so that I can do design 1, 2, 3, do variations of it, and then get people's opinion. Which one do you like best? I also do this when I'm working on color choices for my characters. So I could take, once I finalize the design, I could draw the design over and over again, and then use markers and do different color variations and go, hey, what do you think? What do you like best? So the character designs that I'm working on today are a team of people that have weather-based powers. And the first one that I'm going to work with has the power of to create and control hurricanes, and so he's going to have some sort of a stylized H on on the chest. Each character is going to have sort of a stylized letter built into the design um, that will reflect their um, their powers. So the first thing I was thinking of, again, oh, so I should also note these are character. These are not the primary characters of comic. These are not the hero characters. These are some villains that are going to show up in about 5 or 6 pages. So I can go a little more complicated if I want to, especially on the individual design elements. But I was thinking of something with sort of a slightly padded shoulder, um, sort of a collar, something like that maybe. And then um, so that under the pads would be you'd have sleeves, and then um, again they may have gauntlets or different things to help with their powers. But for right now, I'm just going to do I'm just going to do a basic glove, that mid forearm sort of glove like what we saw in Green Lantern. Could adjust that. Um, this is going to be more well. Let's see. So we want to implement the letter. So if we're going to do an H, maybe I'm just going to start like this with an H, sort of down, and then so it sort of looks like straps or like a harness, um, but could follow the element down, like piping down the leg. That could be cool. And then we'll do sort of some sort of a short boot like that. And I have something very simple like that. So I've got a human form, I've got a basic design element um, that would totally work. Okay, do I like it? Do I not like it? Well, what are some things that we could add to that or change to it? Maybe what do we like? What do we not like? So far, so we'll go to another option here. I feel like the little shoulder pad things I kind of like. I know I talked kind of bad about shoulder pads earlier, but again, these aren't the primary characters. I don't have to draw them over and over. They have weather powers, so they may not be invulnerable to, you know, to other characters. So they might just have a regular human body. They may not be able to withstand punches or things like that. So maybe they need to be padded up a little bit. So maybe instead of um, just a skin tight glove, maybe we'll do something more that has a padded element to it. So we'll thicken up that glove kind of like that. Something to that effect. Um, and now what I usually like is something to break up this line. So from the mid chest all the way down to the mid calves, that's a long stretch. And that's the reason you have characters like Superman that wear shorts. It's to break up the elements that this is sort of the shirt element, this is the pants element. Otherwise, you just have this one long bodysuit that can be a little weird. It's the same reason Green Lantern has that sort of V down around the abdomen. So how do we do that? Um, but also maintain the H. So maybe the H needs to change. Maybe instead of a whole body H, what if so let's do this first. So I'm talking about breaking up the shape. So what if we just do some sort of a belt in the middle? So I can do a circle maybe, I'll tell you why here in a second. So what if we just did a belt across the middle? And then what if I did here? So what if we did a smaller H on like a chest logo, right? So think about like your um, you get polo shirts or sports branded shirts, and sometimes there's just a logo here. So what if we did that? So what if we did like an H for this guy that just ran in that like this, and then maybe there's a circle around it. Something to that effect might, okay. Um, and then that would be about it. Could do something with the legs, but again, we're talking about keeping it simple. The more straps, the more buckles, the more belts, the more whatever, the more I have to draw. So, okay, so I'm heading in a direction. That's not bad. What if we kept it even smaller? So again, I still like this sort of collar, this sort of armored collar with the shoulder pads. What if we did like the circle first? What if we put the H in the circle like that? What if we did, we'll still do the circle. We could even put an H in here if we wanted to. The belt, um, the gloves. I'm gonna try a different set of gloves. What if we did something that was just, what if we had something that was like this, where there's more of like a curve, like the piece to match your collar, um, your shoulder pads, and this. We could even make this part. This could have a seam down it. It could be like a jacket. We could do that if we wanted to. And then you've got your, again, sort of your cuffed, and then this matches this, this, and this. And then what about this? So let's see if I can find one real quick. So what I want to do is to sort of stylize this H. What if I took out these lines so that the H inside the circle essentially would be the same color as the jacket, and that the circle part would be the negative shape on the inside. Again, not bad. None of these are particularly bad designs. And then again, I can go in and I can do color variations, or I can go back to the writer and go, hey, here's some options. What do you like? And maybe he comes back and goes, I like this one, I like the H on this one, but I like the gloves on this one, or something like that. Okay, or vice versa. Honestly, I think he's probably going to defer to me and go, whatever one you like is fine. Um, but this is how I think through it. And so then I could draw, let's say, this design, and I could even just scan just the one, let's say, pretend this one's the final design. I could scan this, reproduce this design over and over again with Photoshop, print it, and then use my markers and do different color variations. So that's one of the ways that I work through some of my designs. Then I can take, once I've come up with, if this is the final design, I could take, the other characters. So some of the other characters have things like tornado power, ice power, lightning power, um, cold power, etc. All weather-based powers. So we could put things like, I could put a snowflake in there. I could put a stylized L for the lightning. Um, you know, uh, T for the tornado, and then start doing each individual character. I was thinking that this guy might have some sort of a helmet um, to use that might cover his eyes, cover his face. Other characters might have big gauntlets, or might need If they have more water-based, might need tubes running across, so you could run, tubes around from the chest, or stuff like that. So take this base, adjust it, and make it unique for each character. So that's how I do it. That is how I handle the character design. So let me come back to the desk here, and we'll wrap things up. All right, so there we go. There's a video talking about character design, some ways that I do stuff, my thought process, and then again, some examples that you can find from existing comics that would kind of tell you things to look for, things to look out for. And again, everything that I showed you today as far as character designs are all very cool. I definitely am not wanting to make it appear like I'm saying one is good, one is bad. Spawn is as good a design as Spider-Man. Spider-Man is as good as a design as the Batman Who Laughs, etc., etc. Galactus is as great a design as the Silver Surfer. But again, just looking at it from an artistic standpoint and what you're going to have to deal with, these are things to look out for. And sometimes designs work better than others. So hopefully that's helped out, and hopefully this will give you some guidance if you're an artist that's looking to get into comics and design your own characters. These are things that will help you out. So thank you so much for checking this out. If you like this content, please like the video. Think about subscribing to the channel. We have a lot of stuff coming up. We also have a lot of videos that are here. Every Monday morning, I do a artistic reviews video looking at Amazing Spider-Man. So we go all the way back to Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man. And I go through the art of every issue with you. And those come out Monday morning at 8 a.m. Central Time every Monday morning. So check out that playlist. We've got videos like this where I talk about drawing, creating comics, etc. So you can check out those. And then we're also going to have some live streams. I'm going to be talking with a new friend named Nick Caputo, who is a Marvel fan and blogger, and we're going to be talking about Marvel Comics, the artist Steve Ditko, the original Spider-Man artist, and Spider-Man itself. So I'm looking forward to that coming up next week. That's going to be on, I believe, June 5th. So that's going to be a super fun live stream. And then some other stuff. So think about subscribing to the channel. Stay notified so you'll see all the new content coming out. Thank you so much for following me, following my projects, and enjoying this video. We'll see you all very soon. Thanks so much.